Earth had seen strange things before, but nothing prepared people for the message that appeared across every major screen on the planet one quiet morning. It began with a flicker, a distortion that looked like a signal error, the kind that usually came during a storm or a broken connection. But that day, the skies were clear over most continents, and the technical teams who monitored global networks had no explanation for why their systems suddenly froze. Before anyone could figure it out, a symbol appeared. It was a circle with 7 lines stretching out from the center like rays, but they were uneven, as if drawn by someone who didn't think much about symmetry. The symbol rotated slowly, glowing in a dim blue light. No human organization used that sign. It didn't belong to any country, company, or alliance. Then the symbol stopped moving, and the message began. A figure appeared, tall, thin, and more like a shadow than a person. Its features were blurred, as though the camera couldn't fully capture it. The voice that followed wasn't deep or sharp. It was strangely calm, but with something underneath it that made every listener uneasy. Many people later described it as a voice trying very hard not to sound afraid. "People of Earth," the voice said, "you stand at the threshold of violation." At first, many thought it was a prank or some kind of elaborate movie promotion. But the expression of the figure, the tone, the sudden disruption of communication networks worldwide, none of it felt like a prank. Governments moved fast. Emergency teams tried to block the broadcast, but no one could. Every screen from personal phones to massive stadium displays showed the same thing. You have advanced beyond the limits permitted to emerging civilizations, the voice continued. Your expansion threatens the stability of the aligned worlds. Most people didn't even understand what that meant. The words sounded like something from a science fiction story, the kind people read for fun, not something to take seriously. Yet the figure spoke with such certainty, such cold formality, that many viewers froze where they stood. Children stopped eating their breakfast. Workers halted their tasks. Traffic in several cities slowed as drivers stared at the glowing symbol on billboards and navigation screens. The message wasn't long, but it felt endless. You will cease all progress beyond your world. Further attempts to extend your reach into forbidden domains will force the Council to remove your presence from the star map. The phrase, "remove your presence," frightened people more than anything else. It sounded like a threat of extinction, though the figure never used that word. Some thought it meant cutting Earth off from space. Others thought it meant disabling satellites. And some, the ones familiar with darker interpretations, understood it could mean something far worse. The message ended with the symbol blinking 3 times before fading away. Every screen went black for several seconds, and when they returned to normal, everything looked exactly as it had before the interruption, except for the people watching. Across the world, silence followed. In homes, offices, streets, classrooms, and airports, people stared at their screens, unsure whether to laugh, panic, or pray. Within minutes, governments held emergency meetings. News stations tried to replay the broadcast, but the signal was gone. It hadn't been recorded on many networks, which was strange. Usually, everything was automatically stored. Only a handful of stations had the footage, and even those had fragments missing, as though something had interfered with their systems. Experts began arguing on live television, some claiming the event was real, others insisting it was an unknown group creating fear for political or social reasons. The world's leaders needed answers quickly. Scientists were called in, cyber teams were ordered to review every system, and intelligence agencies began working around the clock. They all wanted to understand 2 things: who had sent the message, and how it reached every device on Earth simultaneously. The first answers came from observatories and deep space monitoring stations. Several of them reported receiving an odd pulse moments before the broadcast. It came from a point near the outer edge of the solar system, far beyond the orbit of Pluto. The pulse carried structured data, not random noise. This meant someone or something had sent a signal directly toward Earth at the same time. Communication experts found that the interruption wasn't caused by hacking in the usual sense. It didn't break through firewalls or access any hardware. Instead, it momentarily replaced Earth's communication frequencies with its own. No human technology could do that, not without physically controlling every satellite and network tower at once. The conclusion came slowly, and no one wanted to say it aloud. First, the message came from a non-human source. The news spread quicker than the broadcast itself. Some people refused to believe it and demanded proof. Others panicked, imagining invasion fleets and destruction. But a few people, those who had always believed humanity was not alone, felt strangely calm. They said Earth had been preparing for this moment for generations, through stories, research, and curiosity. While governments continued to argue privately, the public reacted in every possible way. Some people locked themselves inside their homes. Others gathered in large groups, looking at the sky as if expecting ships to appear. Scientists held emergency conferences. Religious leaders gave speeches about unity and caution. Social media exploded with theories ranging from hopeful to terrifying. But among all the voices, one older veteran sat quietly in his small apartment, watching the replay of the footage on the only news channel that still had the recording. He wasn't one of the famous names, not someone commonly seen on screens or in newspapers. But he had spent decades working in a branch of intelligence that specialized in monitoring signals from space signals most people didn't even know existed. As he watched the blurred figure on the screen repeat the warning, he whispered to himself, this wasn't a threat. This was fear. He leaned forward, studying the pauses, the tone, the parts of the message most people overlooked. He had heard many foreign languages in his life, studied patterns in communication, and learned how to recognize fear hidden behind formality. The figure's voice trembled slightly at the wrong moments, not when delivering the warning, but when mentioning Earth's acceleration in technology. It was not the tone of a ruler scolding a reckless child. It was the tone of someone trying to control a situation that was already slipping away. He placed his hands on the table and exhaled. He didn't know who the Galaxy Council was, but he knew one thing. They weren't as powerful as they wanted Earth to believe. If anything, they sounded cornered. Around the world, people kept trying to understand the message, but confusion grew. Some nations wanted to prepare for conflict. Others wanted peace talks. A few insisted that humanity should obey the warning and freeze its space programs immediately. No agreement was reached. The world felt like it was splitting into pieces, each piece believing something different. Yet the biggest question remained unanswered. Why now? Humanity had launched satellites, telescopes, probes, and stations for many years. They had landed on the moon, reached Mars, and sent devices traveling beyond the solar system. None of these actions had caused any alien council to contact Earth before. What changed now? What made the Galaxy Council appear with such urgency? Late that night, as most people struggled to sleep, the veteran wrote a simple note on his table. They're not warning us because we did something wrong. They're warning us because they're scared of what happens if we keep going. He didn't know how he would explain this to the world. He didn't know if anyone would even listen. But he knew one thing for sure. Nothing about the broadcast felt like the message of a confident power. It felt like a group begging Earth to stop before something else noticed. Humanity's growing strength. And that single thought was enough to change everything. The world didn't calm down after the message. If anything, the confusion grew worse with every passing hour. Government buildings stayed lit through the night. Phones kept ringing. And thousands of experts were pulled from every field science. Defense, communication, psychology, even historians who studied ancient cultures. Everyone was trying to understand what the warning truly meant. People everywhere felt like the ground beneath their feet had shifted. No one trusted the silence that followed the broadcast, because silence after a threat never felt safe. Across the planet, some groups demanded immediate defense measures. Others insisted the message had to be a misunderstanding, something that could be fixed through calm conversation. And many people simply felt small, like they were suddenly standing in front of a much bigger universe than they ever imagined. The feeling that Earth was being watched lingered like a shadow in every home, school, and workplace. But while the world argued, one person remained unusually quiet. The same veteran who had recognized fear in the alien voice sat alone at the edge of his small kitchen table, staring at the only intact recording he had been able to save. He played the message again and again, not because he wanted to memorize it, but because he was trying to catch something he felt he missed the first time. Every pause, every tremble, even the strange flickers behind the blurred figure fascinated him. He wasn't a man who liked attention. Most of his life had been spent in rooms without windows, analyzing signals that never made the news. Much of his old work was still buried in locked files that only a few people even knew existed. Yet now, for the first time since he'd retired, he felt a familiar pull inside him, a sense that he needed to get involved again. The message replayed once more, and he leaned in so close that the glow of the screen reflected in his eyes. He whispered, "You weren't warning us. You were warning someone else about us." It sounded strange even to him, but the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. The Alien Council hadn't said Earth was harming anyone. They had only said Earth's pace of growth was unstable. They didn't mention any rules broken, harm caused, or territory trespassed. To him, it sounded like someone who saw a fire starting in the next room and didn't want it spreading toward them. Except in this case, the fire was human intelligence, human creativity, human unpredictability. He stood up slowly, grabbed his old coat from the back of a chair, and stepped out into the night. The world was unsettled, restless. Even the sky felt different, somehow too quiet, too still. By morning, the global situation had become even more chaotic. Major nations held emergency press conferences. Some leaders called for caution. Others insisted the message had to be analyzed more deeply before any decisions were made. Small countries demanded transparency from larger nations, fearing that someone might take advantage of the crisis. News outlets repeated the same question: is humanity in danger? No one had a solid answer. In the middle of all this noise, the veteran finally walked into a government building he swore he'd never enter again. The security guards almost didn't recognize him at first, but the moment they saw his credentials, they let him through without hesitation. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. People rushed from room to room, carrying files, charts, and tablets filled with data that didn't bring anyone closer to the truth. The veteran reached the meeting room where high-level officials and scientists were gathered. His presence caused a ripple of surprise. Some whispered his name in disbelief. A few faces lit up as though help had finally arrived. Others looked uncomfortable. His reputation was known worldwide, but his methods were often described as unpredictable. A senior official approached him. "We didn't expect you," the official said cautiously. "I know," the veteran answered in a calm voice. "But after what we all saw, I think you need more than predictable people right now." The room went silent as he spoke. For a moment, everyone's eyes were on him. He didn't enjoy attention, but he also didn't step back from it. He understood the weight of this moment better than most people in that room. A scientist stepped forward. "We're trying to decode the message. We analyzed the energy waves, the audio patterns, the visual interference. So far, we've confirmed the source wasn't inside the solar system originally. It appears the signal was redirected from a structure near the outer edge." "Yes," the veteran said, "and you're all making one mistake. The room stiffened. He continued. You're trying to understand what they said, but you're not paying attention to how they said it. A few experts frowned, confused, but others leaned forward, curious. The veteran pointed to the paused image on the screen. Listen to the pauses between their words. They're not pauses of authority. They're pauses of someone choosing their words carefully, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Their body language isn't dominating. It's defensive. A communication specialist shook their head. Or it could be simply a style of speech from their species. We can't assume human behavior applies to them. You're right, he replied. But fear is universal. The way they emphasize certain phrases, the tension in their tone, the slight quiver when they say forbidden domains. You don't get that tone unless something is scaring you. Another official crossed their arms. So you believe they were afraid of Earth? Not exactly, he said. I think they're afraid of what Earth might attract. The room erupted in confusion. Questions flew across the table. The veteran raised a hand to quiet them. You said you traced the signal to a structure at the edge of the system, he said. Has anyone sent a probe to investigate? A scientist nodded. 2, both disappeared. No debris, no explosion, nothing recorded. They just stopped transmitting. The veteran sighed. Then that structure isn't simply a transmitter. It's a shield. Something happened on their end, something they're trying to hide or protect themselves from. People exchanged uneasy glances. He continued. The Galaxy Council didn't appear because they wanted to control us. They appeared because they panicked. Something out there is watching civilizations rise, and they think Earth has grown too fast. An official leaned forward with a serious expression. Do you have any evidence for this? I have experience, the veteran said simply. Sometimes when you monitor threats long enough, you recognize when someone else is trying to cover their tracks. The room went silent again. No one dismissed his words. He had predicted unknown dangers before, long before the public ever heard about them. His record was far from perfect, but he had been right about too many important things to ignore. A younger analyst raised a cautious question. If what you're saying is true, then the Council isn't threatening us. They're trying to stop us from drawing attention. That's what I believe, the veteran said. And what do you suggest we do? He took a deep breath. We don't panic. We don't attack. And we don't freeze our progress. That's exactly what they want, because they think slowing down will keep us safe. But fear-based decisions never kept any civilization safe. What we need is clarity. We need to know who the Council is running from. The room felt colder after those words. Another scientist spoke softly. Do you think more contact is coming? Yes, the veteran replied. But not from them. Those words hung in the air like a shadow stretching across the room. By the time the meeting ended, the veteran found himself pulled into multiple teams' defense groups, communication research units, deep space analysts. Even though he didn't want the attention, he understood this wasn't about comfort. This was about survival. The world was shifting into a chapter that humanity had never written before. Outside the building, reporters were shouting questions. Lights flashed, and drones hovered overhead, capturing video. People were desperate for answers, desperate for someone who understood anything about what was happening. They didn't get any answers that day, because no one wanted to cause more panic. The veteran walked home with slow steps. The streets looked normal on the surface, but fear was in the air. People talked quietly, watched the sky, checked their phones for updates every few minutes. Humanity felt smaller than it had in a long time. When he reached his apartment, he sat down with a cup of warm tea and stared out the window. The night sky looked calm, but he knew the calm never lasted. Deep in his heart, he felt a truth that he didn't want to say out loud yet. The days after the warning felt unusually long. People tried to continue their routines, going to work, cooking, walking, checking messages, but everything carried a strange weight. Every sound felt sharper. Every night sky felt deeper. Every news update felt like it might hold a new shock. But nothing came. No second message. No explanation. No apology. The Galaxy Council, after delivering one of the most frightening statements in human history, disappeared into silence. Governments across the world continued to meet, but their confidence faded with every passing hour. They wanted answers, solid facts, something they could point to and say, "This is the truth." But silence gave them nothing. Satellites scanned the sky endlessly. Space agencies activated every long-range tool they had, and deep space observatories listened for even the smallest hint of communication. All they heard was emptiness. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like someone holding their breath after dropping a warning and walking out of the room got in the middle of all this. The veteran kept returning to his old habits, analyzing signals, checking patterns, reviewing the message frame by frame. He slept little, and when he did sleep, he dreamed of lights moving through empty space. He didn't like dreaming about space. It reminded him too much of his past work, the things he knew and the things he suspected. One morning, he received a call asking him to come back to the research center. He didn't hesitate. When he arrived, he was taken to a small room filled with analysts. The atmosphere inside was tense. Several screens displayed nothing except dark stars and tiny digital markers. A communications specialist greeted him and pointed at one of the screens. "We tried again," she said. "We sent another message. A peaceful one. A request to talk. And," he asked, no reply. Not even a faint signal this time. "It's like we're speaking into a void." He folded his arms. "How many times have you tried?" 12. He sighed. 12 messages should have been enough to capture attention, even if the other side wasn't interested. But 12 messages going unanswered meant something was wrong. Deeply wrong. The communications specialist added, "We've also been sending short-distance signals toward the structure at the edge of the system." Still nothing. "And the probes?" he asked. Another analyst stepped in. "We sent a third one. Same result. It got close, the video froze, and then everything shut down. No explosion. No interference warning. It just vanished." The veteran walked toward the screen, displaying the probe's last recording. It showed a faint outline of something large and metallic, but the details were too blurry to recognize. Then at the final second, the footage broke into static and ended. He touched the screen gently. "It's not destroying them. It's absorbing them." A ripple of unease spread through the room. One analyst asked, "Absorbing? You mean pulling them inside?" "No," the veteran said softly. "I mean pulling them out of reality. Removing them. Hiding them." The room fell into silence, each person trying to understand what that meant. Humans didn't have technology like that. They barely understood the edges of quantum physics, let alone how to erase something without leaving traces. He turned to the team. "That structure isn't a ship or a base. It's something else. A kind of doorway, maybe. Or a shield. Or a trap. Whatever it is, the Council used it as their vantage point. And the fact that it's still active means someone or something left it running. The idea that something alien was near Earth, silent and watching, made everyone uneasy. Later that day, he joined a meeting in a larger room where officials, scientists, and advisors gathered. The atmosphere felt strained. Information was piling up, but the answers were not. As he walked in, an official spoke. "Our main issue is the silence. We're not getting anything from them. We don't know if they're ignoring us, hiding, or if something has happened to them." A scientist added, "We need to consider the possibility that the council didn't return to their home systems afterward. We tried to track long-range jumps. Nothing. No trails. No distortions. No signatures. So they didn't leave, another person said. Or they left in a way we can't track. Someone else replied. The veteran cleared his throat. They didn't leave. They vanished. Everyone looked at him. He continued. You're assuming silence means they are choosing not to talk. But silence also comes from fear or from being prevented. Think about the tremble in their voice during the message. Think about the urgency. They weren't threatening us. They were in a hurry. An official frowned. Why would they disappear right after warning us then? The veteran had been thinking about that question for days. Now, saying it aloud felt like dropping a stone into cold water. They didn't disappear because of us. They disappeared because something else reached them first. The room froze. One of the scientists shook his head quickly. We have no evidence of another force. This is speculation. It's educated speculation, the veteran replied calmly. If the council had simply ignored us, their structure wouldn't be absorbing our probes. That requires energy, maintenance. Something is keeping that place active. But they aren't responding. That means either they can't talk, or they are gone. Gone. The word echoed in the room like a quiet thunder. People didn't want to consider it, but it was becoming harder to avoid. The veteran continued. Their warning came minutes before they vanished. That timing is too perfect to be coincidence. Someone whispered, You think they were running? Yes, the veteran said. And whatever chased them might not be far behind. The older researchers in the room shifted nervously, their expressions turning pale. Younger analysts looked around with worry, as though expecting answers from someone else. After the meeting, the veteran stepped outside the building. The sunlight didn't calm him. Cars drove normally. People walked down the sidewalks holding coffee cups, and children laughed in a nearby park. The world looked normal, beautiful even, but he knew that normal could be an illusion. Humans had a talent for living through storms without realizing they were standing in the wind's path. That evening, he went home and sat in the same chair he always used. He turned on his television, but every channel discussed the same thing: expert debates, political speeches, interviews with astronomers, arguments about whether the council's warning should be obeyed or ignored. In the background of every discussion was fear. He switched the television off and stared into the quiet. His mind kept returning to the same question. What could make a powerful alien council panic? He took out a notebook, one he hadn't opened in years, and wrote a single line. If they were afraid of us, they would have stayed to control us. But they ran. That means they were afraid of something bigger. The sentence stared back at him, heavy and cold. Meanwhile, across the world, people noticed something strange. Birds in several northern regions changed their migration paths early. Ocean animals moved deeper. Sensitive radio equipment in remote locations picked up faint distortions. They were tiny, almost ignorable, but enough to make researchers uneasy. But the most unsettling change was this: Earth's long-range telescopes, the ones pointed toward the outer system, began picking up shadows. Not objects, just movements, like something passing in front of distant light. But when they tried to zoom, the movements were gone. It felt like something was watching the solar system from just beyond human reach. The veteran sensed this long before. The data teams officially confirmed it. He whispered into the empty room. They silenced us for a reason. The council didn't want us seen. And now, the silence might be the thing that attracts whatever they feared. Sleep refused to come to him that night. He sat awake, knowing the next part of the story was about to begin. And he knew it wouldn't be simple, safe, or comforting. Earth had spoken back to the stars. And now the stars, or something hidden within them, might finally speak back. The strange signs in nature, the flickers on telescopes, the missing probes, none of it created the same fear as what happened 3 nights later. It began quietly, almost too quietly, like the world was trying to whisper a warning before anything truly happened. At first, people in small towns near open fields began reporting odd humming sounds. The hum wasn't loud, but it was steady, like a deep vibration coming from the ground or the air itself. Some said it felt like their bones could sense it more than their ears. Most ignored it. Strange noises weren't unusual in the countryside. But then the reports spread to cities, places where humming sounds didn't belong. People sitting at bus stops, walking home from work, or lying in bed noticed the air trembling slightly. It lasted only a minute or two at a time, and then everything returned to normal. No engines, no aircraft, no machinery explained it. And almost at the same time, RDIO towers across the world picked up soft pulses. They were so faint that most machines didn't detect them, but the sensitive receivers used for deep space monitoring did. The pulses came in slow intervals, one every 10 minutes. Not a message, not a pattern, just presence. By morning, the scientific community was in a silent panic. Dozens of experts gathered to compare data, and all the information pointed to one conclusion. Something was entering the solar system. But it wasn't moving like a ship or a fleet. It wasn't emitting known signals. It wasn't even behaving like a physical object. It felt like a shadow stretching across space, touching everything without being seen. The veteran was called. Immediately, he arrived at the Central Research Center with a calm expression, but inside, he already feared the answer. The moment he entered the analysis room, people rushed toward him with data sheets, recordings, and new telescope visuals. One scientist said, "We think something is approaching, but we can't identify it. No shape, no mass readings. It's like it absorbs light." Another added, "We tried using infrared. Nothing. It's as if whatever this is refuses to be seen." The veteran took a deep breath and walked toward the main screen. It showed a wide view of the outer solar system, dotted with stars and planets. On the left side, a faint curve of darkness moved slowly, almost invisible. The screen brightened to enhance contrast, and the curve became clearer, a soft arc, like the edge of a massive shadow. "How long has it been moving?" the veteran asked, based on the pulses. "At least 8 hours. Direction? Toward the center of the system." Earth. The room grew tense. Everyone understood the meaning without anyone having to say the words aloud. The veteran stared for a long moment, then finally said, "This isn't a ship, and it isn't an object." A nervous analyst asked, "Then what is it?" He ran a hand across his face before answering. "It's a presence, a field, a type of force we don't have the words for yet. Something the council didn't want following their signal." Silence spread across the room. A communications specialist whispered, "You think this is what scared the council?" "Yes," the veteran said. "And now it knows where we are." The statement sank into everyone like cold water. Another scientist asked quietly, "Should we send a message? Maybe it wants contact." "No," the veteran said sharply. "That's exactly what we shouldn't do." People stared at him, confused and uneasy. He continued, "We don't know what this thing responds to. We don't know its behavior. The council warned us to stop expanding. Not because we were dangerous, but because we were visible. Sending a message is like waving a light in a dark forest. You don't know what kind of eyes are watching." The room remained silent, the weight of responsibility pressing down on every shoulder. Later that evening, another emergency meeting was held, this time with top officials from all major nations connected through secure lines. Their faces appeared on screens in a large circular room. Everyone looked tired, stressed, and deeply concerned. An official began, "We can't keep this from the public. The pulses are increasing. The humming sounds are spreading. People will demand answers." Another replied, What do we even tell them? We don't understand this ourselves. We risk spreading fear. The veteran spoke carefully. People don't need every detail. They need honesty. Tell them we detected a space anomaly, and we're studying it. Don't mention the council. Don't mention the shadow. Don't mention the possibility that something has followed the warning. An official asked, "And what do you believe will happen next?" The veteran paused before replying. "I believe the presence is scanning, watching, testing. It's not attacking yet. If it wanted to, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But it is looking for something." "What?" someone asked. "Evidence," he said. "Proof that we are growing faster than we should." The room filled with uneasy shifting. After the meeting ended, the veteran stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the quiet city. Streetlights glowed, cars moved slowly, and people walked with their shoulders hunched against the cool air. They had no idea the universe was watching them. He stayed outside for a long time, staring at the stars. But the sky felt different. Now, not empty, not peaceful, but crowded with something unseen. Something observing. The next morning brought an even stranger event. Small research station located on a remote island reported a sudden blackout. Not all electricity of sound. Every animal, every insect, every movement stopped as if someone pressed a mute button on the world. The researchers stepped outside and found the air heavy, thick, as though reality itself was holding its breath. The silence lasted exactly 50 seconds. Then, everything returned to normal. But the instruments inside the station recorded something. Unbelievable, a faint ripple in the air. Like the fabric of space had been touched by an unseen hand. And the ripple came from above, not below or around. The data was sent immediately to the main center. When the veteran saw the waveform, his heart tightened. He whispered, "It's searching. It's learning." A scientist asked, "Learning what?" "U.S." People exchanged worried glances. In the days that followed, the shadow at the edge of the system continued to move closer. Not fast, but steady. Like something patient. Something that knew it had no need to rush. Earth increased its monitoring equipment. Observatories worked around the clock. Space agencies asked for more resources. But no one knew what to prepare for. You can prepare for a ship. You can prepare for an enemy with weapons. But how do you prepare for something with no shape, no signal, no face? Meanwhile, the public grew restless. Rumors spread online. Some said aliens were invading. Others said the council had returned. A few even believed the world was shifting into another dimension. The world balanced between curiosity and fear. The veteran, however, remained focused. Every night, he sat at his table and listened to recordings from the deep space monitors. The pulses were getting stronger, not louder, but clearer. Like whatever was approaching was adjusting itself to be heard. He closed his eyes one night and whispered to himself, "We're being measured." He didn't say it out of fear, but out of understanding. The presence wasn't attacking. It wasn't communicating. It wasn't fleeing. It was analyzing. Testing. Judging. 2 days later, the first undeniable sign came. The shadow paused. Right at the boundary of the solar system. It stopped moving. Telescopes detected the faint distortion around it shifting, like a large object turning to face something. Not the sun, not the planets. Earth. Every alarm system in the research center triggered at once. Lights flashed. People rushed to their stations. "What's happening?" Someone shouted. A scientist yelled back, "It's focusing on us." The veteran didn't panic. He simply stepped closer to the screen. The curve of darkness slowly shifted, like an eye adjusting its gaze. Something ancient, intelligent, and impossibly vast was looking directly at Earth. He whispered, "This is what the council feared. And now it knows we exist." For the first time in days, The veteran felt a chill go down his spine. The presence had found its target. And now, whatever came next would change everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. The shadow lingered at the edge of the solar system for hours, longer than anyone had expected. Scientists monitored it closely, but each new scan brought more questions than answers. It wasn't moving in the way a spaceship or comet would. It didn't have a clear trajectory. Instead, it hung in place, shifting subtly, almost as if it were alive and breathing. Observatories around the world detected faint fluctuations in energy. Some interpreted them as warnings. Others simply called them impossible. The veteran, however, understood instinctively. It was a presence that had the patience of something far older than humanity. Meanwhile, Earth did what humans did best. It prepared. Military satellites were repositioned. Communication lines were reinforced. Emergency response plans were rewritten to account for scenarios no one had ever imagined. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, designing sensors, shields, and probes that might help understand the phenomenon. Civilians watched nervously from below, unaware of the full scale of what was happening, but sensing that the air itself had changed. Anxiety became a quiet, constant companion in every home. The veteran returned to the research center that evening. His colleagues greeted him with worry in their eyes, knowing that he often had a sharper sense of what was coming than anyone else. He walked past the walls of screens showing the outer solar system, past analysts scanning endless lines of data, and approached the main display. There, he could see the shadow's subtle movement. The barely perceptible way it seemed to twist and pulse with energy. "It's testing us," he said quietly. A young scientist looked at him, her eyes wide. "Testing us? How can it test us if we don't even know what it is?" The veteran didn't answer immediately. He studied the shadow, watching the faint distortions it caused in the light from distant stars. "Everything it does has purpose," he said. "It's learning what we are, what we can do, and how far we might go. It's deciding if we are worth noticing or if we are worth eliminating." That evening, as darkness fell over most cities, strange phenomena began to ripple across Earth itself. Electrical grids in some regions experienced brief outages, lasting only seconds, as if the power was being drawn toward something far away. Phones and radios emitted strange static, sometimes repeating fragments of the original message from the Galaxy Council. People described seeing shadows at the edges of forests, odd flickers of light in empty skies, and a quiet hum beneath the ground, like the pulse of a heartbeat too low to hear, but impossible to ignore. The veteran listened to reports, comparing them with data from satellites and telescopes. Every pattern, every pulse, seemed to match the slow, deliberate movement of the shadow in space. Whatever had followed, the Galaxy Council was not confined to their station or their system. It was reaching out. It was observing Dot by the third day. The presence began to interact more directly with human technology. A probe launched by a private organization to study the outer planets suddenly stopped transmitting mid-flight. Engineers confirmed that its systems were intact, but the cameras and sensors provided no data, no feedback. The probe was there, physically present, but unable to interact with the universe as before. The veteran frowned. He had seen this effect once in older intelligence files, in classified projects studying unknown energy fields. Back then, he had thought it theoretical. Now he knew it was real. "This isn't destruction," he said to the team gathered around him. "It's control. It's rewriting the rules for anything that comes near." The team exchanged nervous glances. Every scientist and engineer present knew the implications. Humanity's tools were being tested, measured, and neutralized by something far beyond their comprehension. And yet, they could not strike back. They had no weapons capable of interacting with the shadow without risking their own survival. Meanwhile, Global leaders convened emergency meetings in secret. The public had been told only that a space anomaly was being studied. Governments carefully avoided using words like alien or threat, but the truth was becoming harder to hide. Panic was spreading quietly. Stock markets wavered. Supply chains faltered. People began hoarding resources, fearing the worst, even as they didn't know exactly what it was. The veteran met with the top officials and scientists to discuss their next steps. Maps of the solar system were projected across the walls, showing the shadow's position in real time. For hours, they debated strategies, defensive shields, communication attempts, probes, and observation techniques. Every option carried risks. Every action might reveal humanity to the presence in ways they could not predict. Whatever it is, the veteran said, it is intelligent, and it is patient. We cannot force it to act, and we cannot ignore it. The council feared this because they couldn't control it. We are in the same position, only with less knowledge. Every decision we make now must be cautious, precise, and deliberate. One official asked, "Do you think it will attack?" The veteran shook his head. "I don't know. Patience is its strength. If it wanted to destroy us, it could have already done so. The fact that it hasn't means it is calculating. But calculating doesn't mean merciful." That night, as the team continued monitoring, the shadow shifted closer to the inner planets. Data from telescopes showed faint distortions in light patterns, subtle gravitational fluctuations, and tiny bursts of energy that appeared to correspond with the movement of the shadow. Satellites registered unusual interference, not enough to damage them, but enough to make navigation and communication tricky. The veteran sat alone in the control room, watching the data flow. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him. He thought about humanity, about the millions of lives unaware of the scale of what was happening. Every human had carried on with work, school, and daily life, oblivious to the fact that something incomprehensibly powerful was watching, learning, and measuring them. He considered the message from the Galaxy Council, delivered so formally, yet trembling with fear. The Council had understood the threat. They had tried to warn humanity, perhaps hoping their words would delay the inevitable. And then they vanished. He realized that their disappearance was not a sign of victory, but of fear. Whatever followed them had proven that even the Council could not survive its approach. The realization made him sit straighter. Humanity was facing a presence older, stronger, and more patient than any known civilization. Yet unlike the Council, humans had adaptability, curiosity, and unpredictability. For the first time since the warning, he allowed himself a spark of hope. "Observe," he whispered to the room. "Measure, learn, adapt. That is our weapon." The next day, the shadow made its presence undeniable to the public. People around the world noticed the humming sounds again, this time louder and more persistent. Power fluctuations affected millions, though no damage occurred. Sky watchers reported faint, irregular patterns of light, like tiny distortions in the atmosphere. Animals behaved oddly, avoiding certain areas or reacting nervously to nothing visible. News outlets tried to explain it scientifically, calling it electromagnetic anomalies or atmospheric phenomena, but the reports carried an undertone of fear. People shared videos online, some blurry, some clear, of the effects they witnessed. Humanity was seeing the first direct signs of a presence it could not comprehend. In the control room, the veteran and his team observed all the reports with careful attention. He reminded everyone that fear was contagious, but panic was dangerous. "The public will see what it chooses to see," he said. "We need to see what it is doing." That evening, a breakthrough came. One of the satellites designed to study outer space anomalies detected a faint reaction from the shadow to specific energy signals. It wasn't a language, it wasn't communication, but a response. The shadow shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly. In reaction to a frequency that humans had not expected it to notice, the veteran leaned closer. It is sensitive. It responds. That means it can be observed, studied, and understood. Not controlled. Not fought. But understood. For the first time since the warning, humanity had a path forward. Not certainty, not safety, but knowledge. Knowledge was power, and in this case, it was the only weapon that could tip the balance. The shadow remained at the edge of the solar system, moving slowly, watching, measuring, and learning. Humanity watched back. Scientists worked tirelessly. Governments coordinated cautiously. And the veteran stayed awake most nights, guiding the efforts, analyzing patterns, and preparing for the moment when the shadow might take the next step. Time stretched on. The presence did not attack, did not retreat, and did not communicate. It waited. Humanity waited with it, aware that every decision mattered, aware that the smallest mistake could bring disaster. And in the quiet of the research center, the veteran whispered once more to himself. The council disappeared because they could not survive it. We might be the first to endure. It was a quiet hope, fragile but real. Humanity had no weapons to destroy the presence, no shield strong enough to block it, no fleets capable of chasing it away. And yet, it had something the Council never had: unpredictability, ingenuity, and the courage to face the unknown. The shadow hung in space, observing. Earth hung below it, alive and moving, watching back. And somewhere in that silent exchange, the first real test of human resilience began. The shadow remained at the edge of the solar system for days, then weeks. It did not move aggressively, nor did it retreat. Instead, it lingered, silent and patient, as if waiting for humanity to reveal something essential about itself. Scientists monitored it endlessly, and while they had learned more than before, each new discovery only created more questions. The shadow was responsive, but not predictable. It did not react to fear, to panic, or to weapons. It reacted to observation, understanding, and subtle changes in behavior. The veteran continued to guide the teams, analyzing every pulse, every energy fluctuation, every minute anomaly in the outer system. He spent hours reviewing data from satellites, deep space telescopes, and probes, piecing together patterns that no one else could see. Humanity had been thrust into a situation that demanded attention, patience, and courage unlike anything before. And the veteran felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him every second. Earth had changed as well. People were aware that something vast and unknown was watching them. Even ordinary citizens noticed the subtle shifts. Animals acting strangely, brief electrical anomalies, and faint, steady humming sounds that moved with no explanation. Fear and curiosity spread in equal measure. Schools held special lessons on astronomy and space monitoring. Families watched the sky at night with new eyes, trying to spot patterns. The public demanded explanations, and governments provided what? They could carefully worded reassurances and promises of observation. But the truth was deeper than any words could explain. Humanity had entered a test, a silent trial set by something far older and more powerful than the Galaxy Council. And this presence was not interested in destruction alone. It wanted to see what humans were capable of. It wanted to understand, measure, and evaluate. One night, a veteran walked across the research center to the main observation room. Analysts worked quietly, focused on screens that displayed the shadow's faint distortions in light and energy. For hours, they had monitored its subtle shifts, recording patterns and fluctuations that suggested intelligence, awareness, and even intent. "It's moving again," one of the analysts whispered. The veteran approached the screen. Indeed, the shadow had shifted slightly, bending a faint stream of light from a distant star toward the solar system's inner planets. The movement was deliberate, controlled and precise, almost like a careful hand reaching across space. "See that?" The veteran said. "It's not aimless. It's studying us. And it has noticed we are observing it." A younger analyst asked, "But why hasn't it done anything hostile? It could easily destroy us if it wanted." The veteran shook his head. "It doesn't see us as a threat yet. It sees us as interesting. The Galaxy Council feared it, yes, but we are not the Council. We are unpredictable. And that unpredictability may be what it wants to study." The words hung in the air like a warning. Humanity was not safe, but it was alive. And that alone gave them the chance to act. Over the following days, Earth took small but decisive steps. Satellites and telescopes focused on the shadow, not to attack, but to observe and gather data. Scientists devised ways to measure subtle shifts in energy, trying to communicate indirectly through patterns of light and radiation. They sent probes, not as weapons, but as careful observers, designed to collect information without drawing attention. The veteran guided these efforts meticulously. He emphasized patience and caution, teaching the teams that this was a test of endurance, intelligence, and adaptability. Every action had consequences, and even the smallest misstep could draw unwanted attention. Then one morning, the shadow made a subtle gesture that no one had anticipated. A faint ripple of energy passed through the solar system, small enough to go unnoticed by most equipment, but recorded by advanced sensors. It was almost like a heartbeat, a gentle pulse that synchronized, briefly, with Earth's rotation. A veteran noticed it immediately. He leaned over the data console, studying the waveform. "It's responding," he whispered. "Not to our probes, not to our satellites, but to us. To the planet itself. To life." Scientists around him stared in amazement. The shadow, which had seemed so alien and unreachable, was sensitive not just to observation, but to the existence of life on Earth. It wasn't simply measuring technology. It was measuring humanity. For the first time, a new strategy emerged. Instead of trying to push the shadow back, ignore it, or control it, humanity would focus on demonstrating its resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. Cities continued functioning, scientists continued studying, and the public went about daily life while maintaining awareness. Every act of creativity, cooperation, and problem-solving became a silent message. Humanity was alive, capable, and unique. Weeks passed. The shadow remained at the edge of the solar system, moving in slow, deliberate ways that mirrored the planet's patterns. It responded to Earth's rhythms, the rotation, the orbit, even subtle changes in energy emissions. And every day, humanity grew more aware of its place in the universe, not as a pawn or a target, but as a participant in something much larger than itself. The veteran often reflected on the Galaxy Council's warning. The Council had vanished because it could not survive the presence. They had been afraid. But humans, unpredictable and resilient, were not bound by the same rules. Their intelligence, creativity, and willingness to adapt made them different. One evening, as the veteran looked at the stars from the observation deck, he thought about the future. The shadow had not attacked. It had not communicated. Yet its presence alone had changed everything. How humans viewed themselves, how they worked together, and how they understood their place in the universe. Across the world, people began noticing subtle signs of change. Animals returned to normal patterns. Power fluctuations stabilized. The hum in the air became less frequent. Life resumed its rhythm, but under a new awareness. Humanity was being watched. And that watching had meaning. The veteran knew that the shadow would not leave immediately. It would continue to observe, continue to measure. But humanity had gained something the Galaxy Council never had: understanding of the presence and the patience to endure it. In the research center, teams continued their work, not in panic, but in focus. Every new measurement, every new observation became part of a careful record. Humanity was learning to exist alongside something beyond its understanding, and in doing so, it was preparing for the next step, whatever that might be. One day, the shadow shifted slightly closer to the inner planets, and the veteran noticed a faint change in its energy patterns. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but he understood it immediately. "It recognizes us," he whispered. "A colleague." Asked, "Recognizes us? How do you know?" "Because it reacted to the planet," he said. "It's not just observing life. It's recognizing intelligence. It's studying humanity as a whole." The realization filled the room with quiet awe. Humanity was no longer invisible. It was no longer just a small civilization in the vast universe. It had been acknowledged by something far older, far more powerful. And that acknowledgement was a gift and a test. The weeks turned into months. Life on Earth continued, but nothing would ever be the same. Humanity had been introduced to a presence beyond comprehension. The Galaxy Council had vanished in fear, and humans had endured, adapted, and been observed. The veteran often walked at night, looking at the sky. Stars sparkled like diamonds, ordinary and familiar, yet each contained the possibility of mystery. And in the vast darkness beyond, the shadow lingered, patient, silent, and watchful. For humanity, the lesson was clear. Fear was natural, but survival required patience, intelligence, and unity. The unknown would always be larger than understanding, but resilience could make the difference. In that quiet understanding, hope grew. Earth had survived the warning. Earth had endured the shadow. And humanity, unpredictable, creative, and alive, would continue forward watchful, aware, and ready for whatever came next. The veteran smiled slightly, knowing that the story was not over. The shadow might stay for years, decades, or longer, but humanity had learned to face the unknown without fear, to endure without surrender, and to live knowing that the universe was watching, and that they were capable of being seen, out, and in. That realization, for the first time since the Galaxy Council vanished, humanity understood that being observed was not always a threat, it could be an opportunity.